Hi, this is Kristen. Welcome back to my series on alcohol and alcohol problems. I'm just having casual conversations about my learning over the years working with clients with this problem. And I wanted to talk about how relationships are impacted by overuse or problematic drinking or a full-blown alcohol problem. And of course, there's no way for me to cover everything about the impacts to relationships in a short video. So maybe I'll elaborate on it further at another time, depending on the interest and things like that. I suppose I could start the topic by saying the use of alcohol is in itself a way for a person to withdraw from life. If you think about it, it is a pain reliever, it's an anesthetic, it's a depressant, it's a relaxant, but it has the effect of pulling one more inward, even if it appears that one is more outward and social and connected to others in their environment when they're drinking. If you are drinking problematically, or if you're wondering about your own drinking, test out my words. Like, think about it. When you go to drink, does it not cause a feeling of insulation? It's a cocooning effect, perhaps. It takes the edge off of experience in your environment, including conversations. There's an edge that's dulled, right? Also, we know that alcohol will affect your ability to empathize with others because it's an anesthetic. It has an anesthetic effect. You don't feel your pain and you don't recognize it in others. So there's going to be less empathy or less connection in that way with others. You're more in yourself, even if you're being gregarious and social and outward. That behavior is not quote unquote real because you drank to get there. You're under the influence of alcohol. So we could say the one who's engaging socially and gregariously, if that's how alcohol affects you or if that's why you might use it, that one that's engaging isn't even the true you. So then we could say the connections and the conversations aren't even meaningful because it's not really all of you. We could say it's a mask for the moment, or we could say it's an alternative personality. You've heard of the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, no doubt. You know, people may say to you, you're a completely different person when you're drinking. You may hear people say, I can tell you drank after the first sip. I can tell over the phone if you've even had just a sip, because there's a switch that people notice taking place in the personality of the person. And so again, as a person's trying to interact with one who's under the influence, are they really, truly connecting with, interacting with that person? No, they're not. So looking at it just like that, the fact that alcohol is more of a way to withdraw from connections to others rather than actually deepen connections with others, we could say that would have a very detrimental effect on relationships. It would have the effect of reducing meaningfulness within the connection. If both people are drinking problematically, think about that. It's like one mask is interfacing with another mask. But then where are the real people in there? Where's the real life? It's the real life isn't engaged with. They're both withdrawn from life. And it's all this sort of, it's behavior, but it's not necessarily based on the reality of how a person is feeling in life, who they really could be, who they are, but who they're not being. So it's highly problematic. I've often said to people in therapy that if someone's drinking problematically, if it's a problem and they're actively drinking, you're not in a relationship with them. You're virtually alone with a person who is not reliably available because they're going to have to drink. And when they drink and when they're under the influence, they're no longer truly available. It's all like I don't want to use the word fake because it feels very negative, but there is a fake quality to it. It's not the real whole person. The whole person has been put aside, has been sat down, so to speak, and now there's another personality acting through that body. And then that can, of course, cause lots of problems, right? When the person who's drinking perhaps overdoes it and they become inebriated, and then they behave in ways that they wouldn't normally do. And they behave in ways that are either dangerous, volatile, chaotic, frightening, angering to others, and maybe to a partner. The experience the partner has of that is that you, the one who's drinking, you did and said all those things. And now I have anger at you. I'm having to get over this. I'm trying to reconcile. How is it that you were able to do XYZ? That's terrible. And how could you? And the person who was inebriated and then, they sober up, next day, and they're like, they might not remember parts of it. They might only remember, this can be frustrating for the partner. Sometimes, like, here's just another example of how this just doesn't work, okay, in a relationship. The person who was drinking they were drinking, they were experiencing the environment and the people and the interactions, whatever the situation was, and they had a story about that while they were drinking. They had a story about it. There was a narrative. Oh, this person looked at me that way, or that person did that, or see, they're having a story through the distortion of their drunkenness, the distortion of their own perceptions. But the story could be remembered the next day, and it could then turn into the basis of the argument, of the justification, of the minimization of what actually took place and why. So then again, the other one is now having to rack their brains, like, how is it that you're saying that after you did that, and that's crazy, that isn't what happened, or that isn't what I meant, or you shouldn't have done that anyway, and so then there's all this drama between the two people where there isn't a true communication going on, because the one who has the problem drinking, they are highly defended. Like I've talked about in other videos, they're highly defended. They're always feeling attacked because of situations like this. So they certainly don't want to think that they were, inflicting pain or causing all this trouble. They could feel very ashamed of that. So there would be a hope that they could minimize it or make it not feel so bad to themselves so they can go on with their day and not feel so terrible or something. And also there's an underlying theme of don't take the alcohol away, right? Or don't tell me it's the alcohol. It was actually that person in that situation. It wasn't because I was drunk. That isn't why. So there's this So there's this drama between the two people where they're not even talking about the same thing, and they can't even have a discussion about it. And the one who is the say they're the non-drinker in this case, they might start to see there's a drinking problem here that actually was the source of all of this drama, or they might just think that's you. And then they might say, it's you. You did this. You did that. You're a terrible person. I don't know if I can forgive you, or things along those lines, right? So it makes it very difficult to parse apart when someone's actively drinking in a problematic way and that they're attached to it, and the other one is left with not really being in a relationship, not getting just normal needs fulfilled within the relationship because their partner is randomly not available, not present. And also there's no communication possible because they're living two separate lives. And there's this semblance of a couple, but there isn't a meaningful connected relationship there. I mean, oftentimes. I'm not saying this is like always how it is. I'm just giving one example of how alcohol problems will definitely impact relationships in ways similar to this. And it could be, it could be that the one who's drinking is quite self-aware. And they could know that they have a problem, and they could be trying to not have the problem, and they might not be ready to let go of the alcohol itself, which is it's really the only way to get rid of this problem. And so there may be communication between two people like that if there's a lot of self-awareness, and if the other person is able to understand that, okay, the source of all the problems is really the alcohol use and abuse, and now they're going to have to make decisions about, well, what are they willing to tolerate? What are they willing to possibly walk away from because things aren't changing and they're being exposed to and subjected to chaos, and certainly not getting out of the relationship what they may have expected a relationship to be for them. So, okay, it's about 13 minutes. I wanted to keep it short, but this is just some examples of how this plays out and how really alcohol problems, they almost always render relationships impossible. It's sad, but why not talk openly about it, right? So think about that if it's helpful to, look at within yourself or within your relationship. And I will likely talk about this a lot more because there's just so much I could say about it. All right, I hope that's helpful, and thanks for watching.